Hello and welcome to Ticket Manager's All Access interview series, engaging leaders from across the sports marketing spectrum to identify and explore critical issues in the business of sports, entertainment, sponsorship, activation, hospitality, ticketing, and even more. I'm your host, Jim Andrews. Joining me on this episode to discuss the unique role of casinos as it relates to sports marketing and negotiating fair market value for sponsorships, among other topics, is Peter Arceo, General Manager of Southern California's San Manuel Casino. Welcome, Peter, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Casinos, they're a very different type of business than a lot of other sponsor categories that many of us are familiar with, beverages, auto, financial services, all of those folks. So I'd like to start off with just a little bit of a bigger picture view about why sponsorship makes sense for casinos, and what's the strategy? What are the objectives for sponsoring? If you could just talk us through that.
For casinos, it's quite simple in my mind. We are in the entertainment industry, and just like sports or other forms of entertainment where sponsorships are available, our number one goal is to ensure that our guests who visit our facility are having a good time. And most important, that when they're having a good time, that they remember that feeling of excitement, that feeling of being able to escape whatever it is that they're trying to escape, and just for a few hours be entertained with that form of entertainment. Well, at the casino, we try to find different ways on how can we connect our brand with our audience when they are not at the casino, and how can we tap into other brands and be able to associate ourselves with brands that will be able to evoke that sort of visceral feeling of having a good time and that energy that casinos inherently have. And so partnering with a sports as an example, or a venue that hosts live events, is an important tactic for us when we think of through our marketing strategy, because what a better way to connect with our guests and be part of that sort of fun, exciting, thrilling experience than at a venue like that. And those types of sponsorships afford us the opportunity to do that. There are a lot of attractive assets related to partnerships that casinos would like to be a part of, and it's not necessarily all signage related. There are a lot of experience related components to partnerships that are highly valuable, in my opinion. And there's nothing better than being able to send your best players from the casino to a game that they won't forget. I mean, who could forget when a team superstar is retiring, or if they're going to lift the championship trophy after winning a championship? That only happens every so often in a lifetime, and to be there live at that event, people remember those sorts of things, and they're going to remember, well, how did I get here? How did I have this experience? Oh, I know. It was through that casino that was a partner with that team, and that's how I was afforded that experience. And so being able to tap into that and be a part of it and truly be partners with teams and venues is really attractive to a casino.
Yeah, I think that's such a great way to put it, because we talk about sponsorship, and we talk about it a lot of times from the sponsor's perspective and the brand's perspective, and what we need to get out of it. And we have to remember that it won't matter if the consumer, the fan, isn't getting something out of it. So I really like that idea of making the experiences for them, making it relevant to them. Which, again, not to say signage isn't important and those kinds of benefits aren't important, but that's not where the relevancy comes in. That's not really what's going to be memorable for those fans. Currently, you've got a pretty substantial portfolio of sponsorships that you're in charge of. Many of them in your home base there in Southern California and Los Angeles. But I was a little bit surprised at first to see that San Manuel has prominent partnerships with the Golden Knights in Vegas and the Raiders in Vegas. You're a founding partner at Allegiant Stadium. What's behind those relationships, those out of market sponsorships?
When we began those relationships, it really took people by surprise, and they were extremely curious, like, wow, what's the importance of that? So I'm happy to talk through that, because it is something unique and different that you don't see very often. But our view, from our perspective, there really was a number of things that we were able to accomplish with those partnerships. First, I'll talk about the Vegas Golden Knights, since that was the first of the two sponsorships that we were able to engage with. When they hit the scene, it was a new team. It was a new team not only for the NHL but for Las Vegas. It was the first professional team that the city had ever had, and there was just a unique energy about that experience that was attractive to us. And so when we saw how the team was able to connect with the fan base in Las Vegas so quickly, and we saw the ability for the team, the Vegas Golden Knights partnership team, to be able to activate those loyal fans early on. And then, of course, there was a tragic moment in Las Vegas around that time period when there was that mass shooting that occurred on the Las Vegas Strip, and we observed and saw how the Vegas Golden Knights were so aligned with the community and gave so much to the community during a time of need, not only in terms of financial support, but also in terms of just overall community support. They were there for the community. And so those kinds of values really aligned really well with who San Manuel is. We are an organization that cares deeply about the community. And so when we saw that team come together and try to heal together with the city at that point in time, that meant a lot to us. And so when we evaluated this opportunity, we just thought, what a great partnership this is going to be with the team. And so far it's been 100% spot on. Now, a key tactical component as well is that, it's no secret that talented folks in hospitality, in both casinos and hotels and also in restaurants, come from Las Vegas. I mean, there's a significant number of hospitality companies in the city. And with our recruiting efforts and us constantly looking to add team members onto our roster, we thought it would be a great way for us to get our brand out there to a city that traditionally wouldn't know who we are. So it served a couple of purposes over the years, but it's been a great partnership in that regard. Now with the Las Vegas Raiders, that was a whole different program altogether. In that instance, we looked at the fan base for the Raiders, and when we learned that a large percentage of Raider fans come from the LA market, we thought, wow, what a great way to get in front of our people in our market when they are in Las Vegas enjoying a game with their favorite team.
Okay.
Now, we all know that one of the benefits to partnering with a sports team is the loyalty and the rabid fan base that is associated with loyal fans that follow their team. And we thought, hey, if they're that loyal to a team that they're willing to travel across state lines to go and experience a game and to be a part of their favorite team, we want to be a part of it too. And so that really served us well, and that it allowed us to expand our sponsorship footprint beyond the state of California and actually get in front of our fans when they're in Las Vegas. So both of those partnerships have done really well for us. We're very excited about it, and something that I don't think you see very often in the market.
I know that you've been very savvy in your approach to determining what you want to pay for sponsorship rights. You and I, in past lives, worked for organizations that did some work around valuation together. So I'd love to hear some of your expertise in that area.
Sure, be happy to share that. I always like to approach a negotiation with. I start with a few buckets. There's the must-have bucket. These are elements of the deal that are very important to us, and we absolutely want to have included. And then I break my wish list bucket into two. It's the big wish list, would love to have that, but long shot in getting it done. And then there's another bucket where it's a wish list that's somewhat reasonable, and I believe that I'll be able to integrate that into the deal. And so I always begin with a conversation with the partner, and to sit down and really understand, because the partner has some initiatives that it's in their must-have bucket as well. Especially if you're talking about category exclusivity, you're usually talking about something where the rights holder says, okay, if you want category exclusivity, then here are the things that I have to have included as part of that. So I like to begin where we come together and understand each other, and that's always a good place to start, because then from there it can only get better. From there it won't have the potential to go south. So I like to start there. I like to start with where what are our must-haves on both sides. Let's come together and put that in play. And then I always have, I like to start off the opportunity with having a partner present to me sort of after I talk about my initiatives and my, my priorities. I like to give them the opportunity to present and pitch some concepts around that, the add-ons, so to speak. And the reason why I do that is to a couple of reasons. Number one, I like to see how they translate my priorities and needs into reality, because that tells me whether or not they're actually listening, and if they are listening, how they translate sort of my needs usually sets the stage for the relationship going forward. Because if they can't process that up front, it's going to be a difficult next few years in the relationship. Because as we know, you start with a deal, but then it's not perfect, and you need to have wiggle room to be able to, massage it over time to fit both parties, and really maximize its value. So I like to have them pitch on those extras, just to see where they're at, and to see how close we are in understanding each other. And then from there, we'll get it to a good place where I will then take it to a third party. I always go third party for a number of reasons, because the two people at the negotiating table are too close to the deal, in my opinion, and we have and carry certain biases with us. And so it's always nice to have a third party come into the picture, and help kind of sift through those biases, and really truly give an independent view and lens on the value of the partnership at that point. And so that usually takes a few weeks, depending on the size of the deal. It could take longer than that. But I bake that into the planning timeline for heading into a negotiation. So I always add that time period into it as far as my planning is concerned. And then once I receive that valuation back, I look at it, and if we're on the plus side, great. If we're not, then there's some work to do, and I go back to the table with the partner, and I explain that there are some things that we need to do to enhance this, or we need to talk about the price a little bit closer. And then that's where those two buckets that I'm referring to really come into play, because that's where we can say, well, if you want to add value, what would you like? And then that's where I start diving into certain specifics, into what can we add into the component of the deal to structure it, so that we can get the value we're looking for within the terms of the agreement. So, in generally speaking, that's how I approach all negotiations. There are specific factors that change depending on each individual negotiation, but that's a pretty good structure of how I do things. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships, and the understanding of one another is important. And I prefer to use the word partnership than sponsorship, because it really is a partnership between both organizations. And when you truly find a great partner, you'll find that relationship maximizes value for everybody through the entire term.
Sometimes when you say the word negotiation, I think some people get scared off. It's like, oh, I don't want to sit at the table and argue about money, basically. But I think, you talk about these things as partnerships and having good relationships. And if that's the case, then it really does make that more of a kind of a creative conversation, right? Than a negotiation. And that's where you really get into more of the kind of the art than the science here about, well, let's find some things that really do add value that maybe aren't monetary, right? And from both sides. And I know you've had some experience with kind of rights holders bringing what I would say non-traditional benefits, not signs, not digital activations, things like that, to the table. Can you talk a little bit about some of that?
Everyone would love to have an unlimited budget, but that's not always the case. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah. I mean, we do have budgets, and there are constraints on dollars. And so, on one side, you have the rights holder that's looking to generate X revenue out of said assets. And on the other side, you have the buyers like myself that have a budget, and we have a board that we need to report to. And We have a budget that we have to meet. And so finding that happy medium of how can we both get there and be at a good place where we're both satisfied with the outcome, I think is key. And I think some of how the ways that we get there is that we look at creative ways to add value to the deal. In some cases it may be adding, depending on the values of the organization doing the buying, it could come in the form of community events and giving back to the community in ways that we traditionally don't do that. As an example, many of our partners come out to the local area where we're at, and throughout the year participate with us in giving back to the community and developing youth and helping those in need. We find a lot of value in community events and community activities. We also do a lot with our partners with respect to recruiting. As an example, right now we're in the middle of a very large casino and hotel expansion, and it's going to require us to hire thousands of jobs. That's not an easy task to do nowadays, but our partners have come to the table and have helped create messages for us to use in social media and online in our recruiting efforts, where they've spoken about how good of a relationship we have, and for those individuals looking to join our organization, that we would be a good choice and possible career opportunities. So again, there you can't put a dollar amount to that, because if you're a good partner will be willing to do that for you. This is a specific time in our time where we need help to recruit. We need help to reach out to people, and so our partners were willing to do that for us, and that's something we didn't negotiate as part of our deals, but they were willing to just do it because we've been a good partner together for so many years. So there are things like that pop up. I think having the flexibility to do that with a partner adds value that you can't intrinsically put a number aside to. I mean, there's, when you need help, you're there. When they need help, you're there. And I think that's a really good sign of a great partnership. I like to say, don't be afraid to talk about these things, which is why I like to have that conversation up front and just kind of be open discussion on, and say, I like to lead off by saying, if I were to paint the perfect picture, here's what a perfect relationship looks like, and then get their reaction. And 9 times out of 10, they'll go, well, here's how we view a perfect, relationship. You take those visions and you hear both sides, it becomes very, very apparent real quick where the middle ground is, and you can really gravitate to that and then get into the nuts and bolts of the deal.
And then also at kind of the end of a season or the end of a contract, did this work?
Yeah, so from my point of view, I like to remain as active as I can throughout the season, throughout the year. I don't like waiting until the recap to talk about things. For those who know me, I like to stay real time on things. So if there's a particular asset that's not working out and we're in the middle of the year, let's talk about it. Let's not wait until the end of year recap for that to come out and be part of the conversation. So, we've oftentimes made many mid-year adjustments, but you got to come to it with a place of knowledge. It can't be all gut feeling. You can't just say, well, I don't like this asset. Well, why not? Because I don't. That's a bad place to start from. But traditionally, what I like to do is say, look, this is an asset that's not really working for us. Well, why do you say that? Well, it's the 4th game in a row. Our guests just really haven't responded to it. We're having, as an example, we're having difficulties activating this asset, and people are telling us it's not resonating with them. So is there anything we can do for the remaining part of the season or the year? 9 times out of 10, there's usually something that they can do. And, teams and venues appreciate that sort of kind of immediate feedback, because I think, I can't speak for them, but I think that they would like to not come into the end of year recap to hear this for the first time either. So I encourage my team to speak up. If something's not working, speak up. And then, tapping into the internal resources of the partner is important too, because sometimes maybe we're not successful because we don't know how to be. And you don't need, there's nothing wrong with saying, I may not be leveraging this asset properly. Can you help me out? Because the one thing that the rights holder has is they have the experience with that type of asset. So they know chances are they have a historical database somewhere or a historical record where they say, well, there was a sponsor who had that asset and they were very successful with it. Here's what they did. Here's what we've seen, or here's what we see our fans or our attendees responding to. That has happened over time as well, where, we were wrong in our assumptions, and getting that sort of feedback and knowledge from the partner, we were able to modify our approach and really make that asset work for us. So open communication throughout the season, throughout the year, raising your hand, not being afraid to say help, or, this isn't working. And then just having that dialogue and not setting it and forgetting it, which I see a lot of people do. They buy a sponsorship and then they think, well, it's just going to take care of itself because, here are the 105 things we get, and we submit our logos and give them our names, and that's it. And I think that at least at least when I see relationships like that, I look at that and I say, well, you're really not maximizing your full potential there. What you're doing is you're doing the bare minimum. And, if the bare minimum is okay for you, then that's fine. But to me, the one thing you can't get back is time, and you can't get back games. So if a game has gone by or an event has gone by and you didn't do anything to maximize it, and you've lost that opportunity to maximize your value.
Right. And that's, and so many times those kinds of partnerships, they're not even partnerships, right? They're very transactional sponsorships. Those are the ones that don't get renewed because nobody knows exactly, what happened. They have, like you said, they haven't spent time activating. They certainly haven't spent time measuring it. So they just go, I don't think that really worked, without any evidence or having put any effort into trying to make it work. The other communication it sounds like you're having is with your customers as well. You mentioned, if you can see after 4 games that a certain activation isn't working. So is that through kind of direct communication, surveys? How are you taking the temperature of the people that you're trying to really reach?
We have hosts from the casino that are hosting the events. And so they have direct contact with our guests that are participating. In that instance, we get direct, immediate feedback. And if there's a particular asset that we're sensitive to, then we will let them know ahead of time. Hey, there's this activation happening at the game. Can you talk to our guests to see if it made a meaningful impact at all, or what their thoughts are? There's nothing better than getting their immediate, raw kind of feedback right away to let us know whether or not that it resonates. And then to a much lesser degree, we'll work together with the team or the venue to see if they've heard anything, especially if it comes in the form of, well, if we're going to do a rally towel or, a t-shirt or, their t-shirts are, I think they always work. So that's a unfair asset to bring up. But there are other components that, where we ask the team, how did this do relative to other, freebies? So, if the t-shirt's your number one, where does this rank? If we tried something different, we didn't do a rally towel. We did the, little signs that you roll out that says, go team, whatever. How did it do? And they go, well, there was a lot of leftover cases of it. People didn't want it. The feedback we're getting from the folks at the gate where people were just like waving us off. Okay, well then that doesn't work for us. Oh, by the way, you have 2 more of these for the rest of the year. Well, guess what? We're not doing that for the other 2. Those are the kinds of things where we gotta, if we wait till the end of the year and they go, oh, by the way, your giveaway was a disaster. It ranked last amongst all of our giveaways. Well, I don't want to be that partner. I want to be the partner that can make an adjustment in the middle of the year, and I don't want to be the last. I want to be the best. And so how do we do that, and how do we get better? We do market research surveys throughout the year. If there's a particular topic that we want, maybe heading into a renewal year, we'll add in, as part of our normal market research, we may add in a question or two around that partnership just to gauge our guests' opinions and attitudes and awareness of that sponsorship, so that we have something to talk about as we head into the negotiation period. We can reference a starting point with, data points from our internal guests.
Makes sense. A little bit of a separate question away from kind of the strategies and tactics, and just what's looking at what's happening bigger picture in the gaming landscape, beyond casinos now with legalized sports betting, and we're seeing all kinds of activity with partnerships between sports books and daily fantasy sites and the different leagues and things. Does that have an impact on the way casinos are looking at their partnerships? That all of this kind of new activity that really didn't exist prior to 2018.
Yeah, I think it certainly has, Jim, in a number of different ways. I think the big one is that traditionally you didn't have to consider a team or a venue as being a potential competitor in that space. And I think what makes sports betting unique is that leagues, teams, and venues are all kind of thinking about how do they participate in that particular activity. And I know it varies from state to state, and law, here in the state of California, it's not currently legal. So I can't really speak from that point of view. However, just watching what's going on around the country, different states are taking different positions on that topic. But what I do know is that leagues, teams, and venues are talking about, depending on where the states go, legislation could jump into the fray, and as an active operator of a sports book or a sports betting enterprise. And so that's unique, because up until now, we never had to think about that. We never had to think about, is the place we are doing a partnership with going to operate a business that could be in direct competition with our interests? So that's very different. Now, that hasn't come, since it hasn't been brought to California, I haven't personally had to deal with it yet, but I can tell you that I am thinking about, what does that mean to our existing relationships, and how is that going to work within our partnerships as it's structured today. But that remains to be seen, but it certainly is adding a different wrinkle into the perspective of partnerships, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time. I think you've really shared some great information, great insights with the audience. And personally, I just really, really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you having me on today. It was always a pleasure to catch up. Hopefully next time it'll be in person.
That would be awesome. Yes, indeed. We'll plan on that. And on behalf of everyone at Ticketmanager, thank all of you for watching. And please be sure to join us again for the next episode in our All Access interview series.